What is good, everybody? This is Taetro here with Novation to tell you all about how I make lo-fi chill beats with the Circuit Rhythm. So when I'm making beats on the Circuit Rhythm, it's kind of part jam, part performance, and part writing all at the same time. And I'll talk about all the ways that that applies here in this beat. But what I want to start with is maybe the first layer of this beat that we're built on, which is the chord sample. So this is important especially for beginners working with samples, but since this sample in itself is a chord, it has multiple notes within it. What's going to happen is as we play it up the scale, it's a major chord, and that's never going to change. So we probably can't make a full chord progression with it unless we break some conventional theory rules, with which many genres do. I just happen to not really do that in my lo-fi beats. So a safe way you can approach this, especially if you're a beginner and you have a sample that is a chord, if we use C on this keyboard here, this is a chromatic keyboard, and then we also use the fifth note, which is G. Those two notes, no matter what key the actual sample is, will always work well together because they're fifth and they're separated. And in a conventional major scale, those chords are both major. Sometimes you can even get away with the 4. But for this beat, I just laid down simple 1-5 chord progression, and it just sounds like this. But usually I want something rhythmic to get the groove going. So I have this sample here on track 6. It's a shaker sample, and it's a shaker loop actually. And if I play you what this sample originally sounded like, it sounds like this. Which if I turn on my click, you can hear it is not at all in time with the project. Now, I could go ahead and manually adjust that with the tuning knob, but we've got the new feature of beat match on the Circuit Rhythm, so why don't we just utilize that? Now, it's perfectly in time, as you can hear. There's 2 ways we can beat match. We can pitch up or down. So if I push this pink button here, still perfectly in time, just has a bit of a different sound because it's pitched a bit higher. I prefer the lower sound. So great, now that we've got a basic groove going with the shaker loop, let's add some actual drums. Now tracks 1, 2, and 3, I usually reserve across all my projects for kick, snare, and hi-hat. And sometimes programming these individually can be helpful, but most often I like to hold Shift and go to the drum pads, where I actually get access to all 8 samples, but at the very least I can finger drum with the kick, snare, and hi-hat. Having the kick on its own separate track is important for me, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But if I'm doing this as a performance, like let's load up a couple empty patterns here for my drums, I'm actually going to keep record quantize off, especially in the genre lo-fi, chill hop, beat music. A lot of the times leaving quantize off can give your music a human feel. So it may not be perfect, but it can still be pretty good. So let's lay down this beat. So you can hear right in these drums, they're not perfect at all. They're definitely not quantized, and that's intentional. It's a behind the beat, laid back feel. And as I start to play with the filter here, I'm reminded that I'm using the filter all the time, especially in performances and improvisation. I love having that here. You can bring out the low end and then drop it back in. Cut out those highs, bring those back in. But for lo-fi, I might also use it as a performance tool, but I might also use it just to add some overall character to the beat just by rolling highs off by about, what is that, probably 5 or 10%, just like pulling it back from the 12 o'clock position. It's probably just a subtle change for you, but here. All the highs. Slightly less highs. It's supposed to be lo-fi, right? Of course, add to taste. And in the spirit of the performative nature of the circuit rhythm, let's look at the grid effects real quick, because there's a couple things we can do here. First of all, if you do want even more of that lo-fi vibe, you can do something like put some noise on in the background, some vinyl crackle, and we can latch that using the latch button, so it's constantly there. For me, sometimes it's a little bit too much though, and what I'd like to do is actually lower the volume of this. So I'll go into edit mode here, and what I'm going to do is just turn down the overall volume of that noise. But that is really helpful when you've got latch mode engaged. I'm going to go out of edit mode as well for now. But if I was working with these effects in a proper performance effects type of way, I'm going to keep latch off. So now instead, all I have to do is hold down a pad and release so I can get these cool performance effects. The reverser has got to be one of my favorite effects, especially those beat repeats as well, and this gate. Just makes your beat way more dynamic, especially when we're working in loop-based music. We want to keep things interesting on the fly. And just like I edited the vinyl sound from right here on the Circuit Rhythm, any of these effects can be edited by enabling the edit setting and turning some of these knobs. And for each effect, these knobs will represent different things. Not only that, you can change which effect is on each pad. Do that right here on the Circuit Rhythm, no component software required. And that's important because your performance effects might change based on whatever type of beat you're working on. Okay, in addition to having drum one-shots, chord sounds, and rhythmic loops, I also like to have a fair amount of melodic one-shots. This is a vocal one-shot. I always love to add a voice sound to my beats because I talked about human feel with the drums, but having an actual sound of a human can add even more of a human feel to what can otherwise be purely electronic, humanless music, I guess. So in the literal sense, adding a vocal sample gives us a human feel as well. So that's sort of like a melodic instrument one-shot, but the other one-shots you might want to have, or even just one good one you might want to have on your Circuit Rhythm, would be a bass sound. Simple bass sound, so you can program your own bass lines. You're not bound to any particular loop's bass line, or you can put a bass line under whatever chord progression you end up with. So that's a very simple bass sound, and it just sounds like this in the beat. Just the root note of the chords. Okay, last but not least, here on track 7, I've reserved track 7 to do some sampling into the Circuit Rhythm, but sampling in time with the project as sort of part of a performance composition hybrid here. So I've got my electric piano. And as you can see on this pattern, I've actually got one note put in there, and this is a 4-bar pattern here. I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me go to sample recording to show you what settings I have dialed in here. Now I've got fixed recording turned on. That's off, this is on, and I want to record for a full 64 steps. And I'm also selecting a specific sample slot, which is right here, which if I go back to that pattern on track 7, the sample here corresponds to the sample slot that I'm recording into. Just remember that for later. Another important setting I have here is threshold recording, meaning as soon as Circuit Rhythm hears a sound and recording is engaged, it will start recording. And we've also got monitoring on. which allows me to just improvise over the top of the beat without recording anything at all. But when it does come time to record, when I'm satisfied with sort of the ideas I've been working out, I can play the beat, engage the record mode. It hasn't started recording, and it won't start until it hears sound from the input. So let's record a melody on top of this. Here we go. So you can see that it filled the full 64 steps, the bar filled over time, and now it's saving that sample into that record slot so that when I hit play again, that melody is there. No retiming to be done here. I recorded in time with my project and just, it was instantly in a pattern because I had it pre-set up here on track 7 with that sample recorded right onto the downbeat. Super easy. Okay, lastly, real quick, I talked about why it's important for me to at least have my kick on a separate channel. The reason for that is very much take advantage of the sidechain sound, and let me show you what that really sounds like by playing a few layers with my kick on. Kick. If you can't quite tell what's happening, the sidechain is on, and I can make it super extreme for you as well. It's pretty extreme on the vocal sample. Let's add it to the shaker. You hear how it's like completely cutting out the shaker there. That's a little extreme. But just a gentle sidechain there. And of course, the sidechain source is track 1, which is the kick. Having that kick cut through for me is just part of the lo-fi sound, or at least part of the lo-fi sound that I like to go for. Because just like rolling off the filter a little bit, having the kick cut through and almost like blow out the other layers is similar to having like cheaper, older speakers where the bass is just a little too overpowering. I don't know. For me, that's a little bit part of the sonic characteristics of the lo-fi that I like to make, at least. So that is how I create lo-fi chill beats on the Novation Circuit Rhythm. Like I said, Circuit Rhythm is unique for me in beat making because it's not like working in a DAW. It's truly a groovebox experience where I'm part performing and part composing at the same time. And that's a lot of fun. So if you happen to have any tips for making lo-fi chill beats, leave them in the comments down below. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear those as well. Make sure you subscribe to Novation's channel for more cool videos like this, and make sure if you're a Circuit Rhythm owner that you update your firmware, because some of the features we showed off today are from the latest firmware update. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Taetro for Novation. Have a good one.